In Caring Arms Chapter 2, Dr. Uzumaki, "Dear gods, please, just spare my brother," he whispered. "You unlike me, he's really nice. He wants to be useful, and I got in his way." As his life slipped away, he could barely make out the form of his younger twin, bloodied by the demon that appeared in the night. Yuichiro Tokaido awoke to the sound of knocking, and not just any sort. It was the kind of knocking that echoed with the sound of desperation and panic. The banging was intense, so loud that it reverberated through the two-story building that comprised Naruto's clinic. His eyes opened, turquoise orbs glinting against a dull moon. Nearly sunrise, he realized. A frown marred his delicate features. He slowly rose from his futon, wondering who was banging at the door this early. Naruto. He pondered, before shaking his head, dispelling the thought. His sensei had a key. Surely, he wouldn't need to knock so harshly, especially at such a time. Yuichiro groaned, then threw off his covers. He pulled on a sleeveless shirt, using his one good hand to wear his clothing. His left arm was nothing but a stump, lost to a demon attack 3 years ago. Despite this, he was still able to function properly, putting on his clothes with the utmost ease. Turning on a light, he slowly descended the stairs with a tired expression. He rubbed at his eyes, yawning as he entered the main area of the clinic. It wasn't large by any means, but comfortable enough to house a handful of patients. An examination table could be seen, lined with clean linen. Numerous medical instruments were mounted on the wall, sleek metal components reflecting the lights above. A few medical beds were in the main lobby as well. Beyond that, a hall led to 5 other rooms, each designed to house more critically ill patients. Yuichiro made his way toward the door, brows twitching as the knocking increased in volume. "I'm coming," the teen yelled. He brushed a strand of onyx hair from his face. He would need to get a haircut soon. Once at the entrance, he could see the silhouette of 3 people behind a translucent portion of glass. Pausing for a moment, he peered out cautiously before unlocking the door. Yuichiro froze. Please," a man exclaimed, carrying 2 children in his arms. "My children and I were attacked." They're not responding. "Help us, I beg you." Yuichiro swallowed hard. He shuddered, blood going cold as he observed the sight before him. The man appeared to be in his late 30s. He was bleeding from the scalp, his breathing heavy and labored. He carried 2 others. A boy and a girl, and their condition was far worse than his own. The boy had 5 deep scratches running from his chest to the base of his abdomen, while the girl suffered severe injuries to her leg and stomach. Her head also bled profusely, soaking her brown, lengthy locks. "Will you help us?" the man urged, panic in his voice. He looked around nervously. He was pale, and desperation colored his features. I. Yuichiro began. "We're a small clinic, sir. I specialize in chronic illnesses, mostly. Not traumatic injuries. But you have to know something, anything that can help them," he pressed, panting heavily with each word. "Please, you're the closest place to us. I don't think my children will make it if I go anywhere else." The black-haired teen shivered with apprehension, clenching his fist. Trepidation settled in his stomach like a stone, stunting his actions, clouding his judgment. "This is too much," he thought. "I'm still learning. I can't help them." Then, an image flashed before his eyes. A memory of 3 years ago, when he had been injured, on the verge of death. He had given up on life, ready to die in a pool of his own blood, left arm severed by a vicious demon. Only he didn't die. Someone had saved him, pulled him from the brink of death. And so, despite the uncertainty, Yuichiro gritted his teeth and opened the door, allowing the desperate man to enter. He rushed in, holding his children tightly. "Over there," Yuichiro ordered. "Put them on those 2 beds." The man complied and gently laid both children down. Yuichiro turned on the lights. He rushed to their medical cabinet, grabbing all that he could with his good arm. Clean cloths. Antiseptics. Everything he could find. He returned to the man and placed the materials on each child's bed. Here, you have 2 hands. Take this and put pressure on your daughter's wound, he ordered, focusing the father's attention on the girl. The man nodded vigorously and took the cloths from him, applying firm pressure to his daughter's abdominal region. I'm Yuichiro. What's your name? He asked while studying the boy's injuries. Jiro, said the man, tears in his eyes. He continued to press into his daughter's wound. Almost instantly, the once white cloth turned red with blood. Yuichiro loosened the boy's clothing. He found that his wounds weren't as deep as his sister's, but still life-threatening, nonetheless. Jiro, he began, also applying pressure to the son's chest. I want you to tell me what happened. Jiro shuddered. I don't really know, he admitted. We were all asleep. Me, my wife, and my children. The next thing I remember is waking up to my daughter screaming. We all rushed to her room. He took a deep, shaky breath. And there, she was being attacked by some sort of monster. I must be going mad, or something. I'd never seen anything like it. I managed to escape with my children. But my wife. You don't need to say any more, Yuichiro remarked softly. In his mind, he reached a conclusion, connecting the dots about this peculiar event. Jiro could not hold back the tears. Will my children, will they survive? I don't know, Yuichiro answered honestly. I can't do much on my own right now. I'm still learning. But my sensei should be returning soon. And if anyone can help them, it's him. Yuichiro glanced outside, through a window. Dawn was approaching, and he hoped Naruto would be returning from his latest assignment. Earlier Tokyo was a bustling city, despite it being so early. The sun had not risen, yet the streets were filled with modest amounts of people. Workers, mostly. They trudged along the path, intent on reaching their jobs in time. All around, buildings rose into the sky, a telltale sign of Japanese industrialization. Electrical lamps illuminated the faces of many. Some looked worn, not liking the fact that they had to be up so early. Others, dressed in expensive suits, walked about with much on their minds. A few automobiles lined the city streets, reserved for the wealthiest of denizens. As Naruto moved, many eyes seemed to be drawn to him. Or perhaps, they were staring at the passenger on his back, her arms curled tightly around his neck. Though he had been here for almost 3 years, Naruto still found it peculiar that he could not sense a drop of chakra. It was jarring at first, realizing that he was the only one of his kind, but he had since grown accustomed to it, and he learned to ignore the strange feeling that came with knowing that he was utterly alone. Strangely enough, the world nature itself still pulsed with the energy of life. From the grass, to the trees, to the lakes and streams, natural energy was as abundant here as it had been in the elemental nations, untapped and forever unreachable by the people of this world. He took in a breath, then gazed at the cloudless sky. 3 years, he mused. Nearly 3 years since his defeat, and the guilt of it all still weighed heavily on his mind. He had failed, inadvertently abandoning those he had sworn to protect. It was a great burden, one that never ceased to permeate his thoughts. However, instead of falling into a pit of despair, he found something to do, something to keep himself occupied, even as he strived for a way back home. Here, he was a doctor, and though his skills in medicine were nothing compared to the fifth Hokage, his ability to help the sick was almost godlike in a world without chakra. He wondered what Sakura would think. He chuckled to himself. Years ago, she had insisted on teaching him medical ninjutsu. Being the bonehead that he was, he questioned her motives. He was a fighter, a Fuinjutsu user. Not a medic. Hell, he healed quicker than most. So, of course, there was no reason to learn. But she'd convinced him, stating that, if he wouldn't learn for himself, then perhaps he should learn for the sake of others in the event that he needed to save someone's life. Reluctantly, he agreed, soon falling in love with the field of medicine. He even sought out Tsunade to teach him, further boosting his knowledge. And now, stranded in a country where illness and injury claimed the lives of many, he was grateful to Sakura for fostering this skill within him. He was no miracle worker, but he had saved more lives than he cared to count, thanks to the instance of a friend. I'm sorry, Sakura. She died, protecting him during the end of the war. Naruto frowned, dark thoughts rising from the depths of his heart. But then, Susumaru stirred in his arms. Still on his back, she stiffened as she came to, amber eyes growing wide as she found herself being carried by the very man she had tried to devour. She had been so quiet, he had almost forgotten she was with him. Since her vow at the forest, since drinking his blood, she had fallen asleep for what seemed like the first time in decades. Her breathing quickened when she awoke in full. Finally awake, Naruto remarked, smiling a bit. Her pale features burned red, and she was unable to find the right words. She remembered everything clearly. The forest. Their fight. Her utter humiliation and defeat. His kindness. And his blood. The thought of it made her body tingle. Even though a multitude of people walked by, the desire she once had to attack them was gone. Well, not entirely. She was still a demon, after all. But these people paled in comparison to the man carrying her. His blood was unique, more so than even those who possessed Merekka. So different in fact, that it felt otherworldly. It had satisfied her in a way she never knew possible, cleared her thoughts of the ravenous haze that clouded the mind of a demon. Hi, she finally replied, then cursed the pitiful sound that left her lips. Naruto laughed a bit. This is strange, isn't it? He said after a moment. Susumaru regarded the back of his spiky mane, still stricken with wonder by this whole situation. Why yeah, she spoke. I'm not sure what to say. You beat me half to death. I think you also saved me. A thank you doesn't seem like much. But if you'll accept one, then you're welcome, Naruto cut in. He turned to face her, sapphire eyes glinting warmly. You're right though. A thank you isn't enough. Don't forget the promise you made to me. Susumaru nodded slowly. Her black hair was still stained with blood, now matted and dried. In fact, portions of her clothes were ruined. Her orange kimono was torn in many areas, too. However, Naruto had since covered her with his black suit, wrapped snuggle around her shoulders. They walked in silence for a time. Since tasting his blood, she'd felt tired. She hadn't slept in ages, and the mere fact she dozed off shocked her as much as her effortless defeat by his hand. She didn't know what it was, but something inside her felt different. Naruto. Why did give me that choice? Susumaru asked quietly. Why not just let me die? I attacked you. I wanted to kill you. To eat you. He pondered her words, all the while keeping track of time. I felt compassion for you, Naruto admitted. I've killed many demons, even more than some demon slayers, in fact. But something about you made me rethink just letting you die. And what was that? Naruto paused. I can't really explain it. She slumped on his shoulders, unsure of whether her proximity to him was appropriate. He didn't complain, so she remained still, resting her chin near his neck. The scent of his hair was nice, calming. You were right. I remember my life before being turned, she said sadly. Man, I was such an idiot. I can't believe my parents and siblings put up with me for so long. She took in a shaky breath. I should have listened. I wouldn't have been turned if I hadn't gone out that night. I really messed up. We all make mistakes, he offered. All we can do is look to the future and learn from the past. Yeah, she whispered, stretching out her hand. A tamari materialized on her palm, before promptly disappearing. I guess that's true. Naruto turned a corner, moving down a new street. They reached a different part of the city. It wasn't an opulent area, nor was it poverty-stricken. It looked nice, comfortable, homely. Are you human? She ventured. Yeah. Why do you ask? Because you beat me. Effortlessly. I've seen demon slayers fight, but not like the way you do. I'm different, he supplied. She thought for a moment. You're also a doctor. I am, he said. Susumaru tilted her head. How old are you then? I'm 19. Really? You're so young, she marveled, amber eyes growing wide. And as they approached a new street, Naruto suddenly stopped walking. He turned to look at her once again. His gaze was kind, but firm. I just want to make things clear, Naruto began. His voice was more serious than usual. I can't trust you entirely at the moment, if I'm being honest. Don't take this personally, but for the foreseeable future, you will be under my watch. If you regress, even by one step, if you attack anyone, if you lay even a scratch on an innocent person, I will make sure your life ends, you understand? Eyes lowered, a silent nod was her response, and he continued to move. Naruto knew it was harsh, but he had to lay down the rules. She was a demon, one he had chosen to keep alive. She was his responsibility, his burden. Perhaps he was making a grave mistake by doing this. Harboring a demon? Utterly unthinkable. But like Tamayo had shown him, some demons were still capable of good, in spite of past actions. I don't think you have to worry about me attacking someone, she said after a bit of silence. A blush tinted her cheeks as she gazed at him. Your blood, it's so different from his. They stumbled into a commotion on the way to the clinic. As early as it was, a small crowd was gathering, and many police officers surrounded the area. Wielding batons, they kept the people at bay, all while inspecting the scene. Naruto glanced at his timepiece, and realized it was nearly 5:30 in the morning. With one hand, he carried a briefcase filled with medical supplies. With the other, he supported Susumaru, who still clung to him tightly. The sun would be up in a matter of minutes, but the scene of destruction caught his gaze the instant he saw it. He stopped to inspect the commotion. He maneuvered through the throng of people, reaching a scene that made him frown. A few buildings were damaged, almost as though a tornado had ripped through them. Shattered glass and splintering wood littered the street, forming a path of destruction too unnatural to ignore. Worse yet, the sight of a few mangled bodies was visible. Notable was a black-haired woman, literally torn apart like a slaughtered animal. Her eyes were hollow, mouth still open as though screaming in agony. Susumaru stiffened, a chill running through her. The presence that lingered in the air was a powerful one. Familiar, too. Naruto glanced at her, a curious brow raised. A bolt of panic flashed upon her face. Her heart began to race as a fearful thought came to her. Obviously, this was the work of a demon. It was clear as day, judging by the very nature of the destruction. Seeing this, would he change his mind about letting her live? I had nothing to do with this, she said quickly, tone hushed yet apprehensive. I never said you did, he replied. This seems to have happened recently. You were with me the whole time. You're not responsible for the actions of others, Susumaru. Why yeah, sorry, she whispered. A police officer came up to them, directing Naruto away from the carnage. Sir, for your own safety, please stay back, he ordered. Naruto looked apologetic, facing the man clad in uniform. "I apologize, officer. I'm just checking for survivors." He put his briefcase down. "See, I'm a doctor, and I own a clinic several minutes from here. I'm willing to help if there's any need." His eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh. You're Dr. Uzumaki, aren't you? I don't live in this part of the city, but I've heard about you all over Tokyo. They say that a single touch of your hands is enough to heal the sick." Naruto waved him off. "You flatter me, sir. I'm just doing what I can to help those in need." Of course," said the man, before returning to the topic at hand. "But as of now, there are 4 victims, none of which survived. It's terrible, really. All of them were viciously attacked in their own homes. I can't imagine the type of people that would do such a thing." He swallowed, glancing around. "Makes you wonder if those tales about demons are true. Anyway, neighbors do claim that the husband and children of a female victim fled the scene. Though, I'd advise against staying here any longer, Uzumaki-san." Susumaru kept her face hidden from view, guilty and ashamed of the fact that she had also done such things before. Was she truly deserving of this second chance? "Is she doing okay?" the officer asked. Naruto glanced at Susumaru, whose eyes were dull and crestfallen. He gave the man a small smile before leaving the area. "She'll be fine. She's just a bit tired," Naruto said. "Take care, officer." Moving through the gathering spectators, Naruto picked up the pace. He followed peculiar trail of blood leading away from the scene. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. Then he promptly broke into a sprint, a surprised Susumaru holding on tighter than ever as the world began to shift and blur. Naruto arrived at the clinic in seconds, barging through the front doors. Susumaru could smell blood the moment they entered. She shivered as the scent wafted through the air, reaching her highly attuned senses. Her fangs lengthened and her claws sharpened against her will. Her heart rate quickened as she was assaulted by the very thoughts and feelings she had vowed to leave behind. The sheer amount of blood triggered her demonic instincts. Tremors racked her body without remorse. She tightly shut her eyes, even as her mouth watered with subconscious desire. She clung to Naruto, burying her face into the nape of his neck. She expected him to recoil, expected to see a disgusted look on his face. But instead, she felt a palm on her hand, a small yet comforting gesture that eased the turmoil within her mind. Mustering the strength, she willed her fangs and claws to retreat. Her tremors dulled and her breathing slowed to reasonable pace. "You're okay," he mouthed, hands still upon hers. In the main area, Yuichiro looked up as Naruto finally entered, relief in his eyes. "Naruto," he cried, his only arm stained with blood. Next to him, another man was present, holding a crimson cloth to a girl's abdomen. "Wait, who's that?" "That's not important right now, Yui," Naruto supplied, letting Susumaru off his back. She wobbled on shaky legs, and Naruto reached out to steady her. Finding her balance, Susumaru smiled a bit. "Thanks. I'm all right." "Okay," Naruto said softly. "The sun's rising. I want you to head to the basement. Follow the hallway. There are 4 rooms. You can stay in the first one to the right." Susumaru complied and quickly left, casting one last glance at Naruto and the situation he now found himself in. With that taken care of, he turned to the patients under his roof. As suspected, the husband had fled with his children, finding aid instead of waiting for help to come to him. Naruto rolled up his sleeves and took off his watch. He washed his hands thoroughly, then strolled to main treatment area with a calm, collected expression, taking a deep breath as he assessed the situation. 3 people. 2 males. 1 female. 2 children. "Took you long enough," muttered Yuichiro, smiling with relief. He turned to the other man in the room. "Jiro, This is Dr. Uzumaki, the owner of this clinic. He's here to help. Naruto regarded the man with a warm gaze. I apologize for not being here sooner, Jiro. You've done well. Please, let me take over from here. The man quickly nodded, relinquishing his hold on his daughter's wound. His bloodied hands shook, and exhaustion finally began settling in. He looked broken, the injury to his temple trickling a moderate amount of blood. He sat on the nearest bed, gazing on with apprehension. How long has it been since they arrived? Naruto inquired, applying firm pressure to the girl's abdomen. Less than 15 minutes, Yuichiro said. I inspected them, and she has the most serious injuries, followed by the son. He paused. I'm sorry I couldn't do much to help them. Naruto shook his head. Stop that, Yui. Your quick thinking bought them more time that they desperately needed. The blonde shinobi halted his pressure on the daughter. As soon as he did, fountains of blood began to flow from a deep puncture wound, located on the left lower quadrant of her abdomen. He frowned. The depth of her injury wasn't reassuring. But he'd make it work. She'd live. Glancing down, he also noticed her left leg, just below the knee, was damaged beyond repair. Thankfully, Yuichiro had tied a tourniquet around her leg, halting even worse bleeding. Finally assessing the situation, he summoned a shadow clone to gather supplies. Behind them, Jiro's jaws opened with shock. His head spun. He rubbed at his eyes, confused and questioning his sanity. The second copy of Naruto, knowing what to do, found what was needed: more clean linen, a container of saline solution, sutures, scalpels, a surgical saw, and many bandages. He quickly got to work, cleaning the daughter's wound with saline. She moaned in protest, tears in her eyes as a wail left her lips. It's okay, sweetheart, Naruto soothed. He placed a hand on her head. A green glow seemed to surround his palm, and the cut on her forehead slowly began to close. She fell unconscious once more. Yuichiro, Naruto said. Start cleaning the son's wounds. I'll get to him soon. His clone handed the younger boy the saline solution and clean clothes before promptly disappearing in a puff of smoke. Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow and began the difficult procedure. Again, he focused. His chakras spiked, then compressed, flowing into his arms, then his hands, then his fingers. He hovered his palms just above the daughter's stomach. Then he released a controlled stream of energy, targeting the epicenter of her wound. And slowly, painstakingly, her abdominal injury began to mend, stitched together with incredible precision. From connective tissue to skin, the bleeding slowed over a period of time. To the layman, he was performing a miracle, an act of the gods. But to those adept in the practice of medical ninjutsu, the act of healing an injury was down to a specific science. His chakra, refined and controlled, acted as a catalyst, stimulating the cells of the body, forcing their rate of division to increase exponentially. A wound that would take weeks of cell division to repair, when guided by him, could be healed in a matter of minutes. However, he also had to be cautious. He had to monitor and adjust the rate of division, lest the human cells run rampant and trigger the formation of cancer cells, further exacerbating the issue. Some time passed before Naruto halted the flow of chakra. Sweat slid down his face, his features paler than usual. Inspecting her wound, he concluded she was no longer at death's door. Not completely healed, but close enough. He patched her wound with the bandages at hand, before looking to her leg. Sadly, it was too damaged for him to do anything, with sections of calf outright missing, bitten off by the demon that attacked her. It would need to be amputated, hence the surgical saw his clone had retrieved. But that could wait. He turned his attention to the son, who Yuichiro had finished prepping. Naruto washed his hands once more before getting to work. The boy's injuries were different. His plight comprised of deep lacerations, running from his chest to abdomen, 5 marks shaped like claws. "Get the sutures ready," he instructed Yuichiro. The black-haired teen nodded. He gathered the sterile material and kept them at the ready. Across from Naruto, Yuichiro watched the process with wide, attentive eyes. The abilities his sensei possessed never ceased to amaze him. It was always fascinating, and the sheer focus it took was even more amazing. Normally, Naruto was playful, mischievous, and somewhat clumsy. Hell, on a normal day, he forgot the location of most of their medical supplies. But that side of him always seemed to disappear when faced with situations like this. Yuichiro glanced at his missing left arm. Just as he was helping these children, Naruto had done the same to him almost 3 years ago. Naruto healed the deeper layers of the boy's cuts, before closing them with the sutures. He worked swiftly and efficiently, approximating all 5 lacerations with steady hands and masterful fingers. The boy, unconscious, showed little protest. Finally finished, he let loose a breath. Even after years of doing this, he still felt nervous. No matter how many people he operated on, the weight of knowing he held the life of another person in his hands was still heavy and humbling. Inspecting his work, Naruto's gaze grew distant, wistful. Tsunade would have done this in half the time. "You okay?" Yuichiro inquired. Naruto seemed a bit pale, eyes glazed. He grinned, brushing off the concern. "Of course, Yui. Why wouldn't I be?" The teen shrugged. "I don't know. You just seem tired." "Well, it is dawn," he replied. Glancing outside, he watched as the sun rose, streaming through open windows. Yuichiro brushed a strand of hair from his face. He really needed a haircut. "What took you so long, anyway? I thought your trip was only supposed to take a day." "You know how these things are," Naruto replied. He washed his hands for the 3rd time, then made his way to the girl, still unconscious, still breathing. Her father watched closely. He was relieved, noticing that his children were now in stable condition. It was a small town, overrun with illness. After treating as many people as I could, I decided to stick around and help investigate the cause of the plague. "And the woman?" Yuichiro asked, eyes narrowing. Naruto half smiled. "We'll talk about it later. Because one more thing remained, amputating this poor child's leg." Naruto frowned deeply. Yuichiro fared worse, a deep sadness crossing his features. Because, just like this girl, he had lost a part of himself to those wretched demons. "I'm sorry, Jiro," Naruto said gently, turning to face the man. "Your daughter's leg is too damaged for us to save. The only thing I can do now is remove it and prevent any infection. It's unfortunate, and I wish I could do more to help." Jiro, still remorseful, smiled a bit. Though his head spun, and his skull pounded, he had been lucid enough to see that these two had saved his children's lives. Sure, Keiko would be devastated by the loss of her limb, but she would still live, she would still grow up alongside her brother. "That's okay, doctor," whispered the man. "I'm grateful to you for saving them." Yuichiro noticed the dazed look in Jiro's eyes. He quickly moved to the man's side and helped him into the empty bed. Blood still flowed from the cut on his temple, dripping down his cheek. "You have a concussion," Yuichiro explained. "I'm going to need you to lay down." The father didn't protest, even as Yuichiro began dressing his wound. Naruto, now ready to finish the remaining task, picked up the surgical saw. He grimaced, taking no pleasure in this final act. Under normal circumstances, it was far from a pleasant experience. But not with him. He would make sure she barely felt a thing. He gently applied a local anesthetic, something to help numb the most affected area. Running wind chakra down the blade, Naruto separated her lower leg from the rest of her body in a fraction of a second, giving her brain little time to even register the pain. It was a clean separation, with minimal damage to surrounding nerves and tissue. Then, not a second later, he began the healing process once again, ligating major blood vessels and nerves with chakra, before finally suturing her amputated leg. She's a demon, isn't she? Yeah. Yuichiro made a face. But why? Why is she here, in the clinic? Naruto crossed his arms, seated at his desk. He'd been writing a report concerning the event that just occurred. Documentation, how he hated it. Though he ran a private practice, he was still beholden to some rules and regulations. Because she has no other place to go. She's a demon. Since when have we ever cared about whether they had shelter or a place to stay? Since today, Yui, Naruto replied. He stopped what he was doing to give his student the utmost attention. They're flesh-hungry monsters who kill without remorse, Yuichiro continued, clenching his single fist. What about what happened today? How do we know it wasn't that demon that caused this mess? Naruto shook his head. She was with me the whole time. She's not responsible for what happened. The younger teen's eyes burned with frustration. But she's still a demon, and her kind is the cause of so much suffering. Just look at what they did to me. Because of those monsters, I've not only lost my arm, but also my brother. Muichiro, he thought sadly. He hadn't seen his younger twin in years. It doesn't matter if she's not directly responsible. Being a demon, she's just as evil as the one who hurt Jiro's family. Naruto regarded him patiently, letting him finish. He understood. Yuichiro was angry, and rightfully so. But his words were still far from rational. Just because she's a demon, she's somehow just as evil. Naruto said, repeating the teen's words. Would you say the same about Tamayo? About Yashiro? Yuichiro stiffened. No, but they're different. Naruto finished for him. They're the good demons. Naruto stood from his chair and placed a hand on Yuichiro's shoulder. Look. I get it. Demons kill the innocent every day. Most of them deserve a horrible, painful death, right? They're the worst of the worst, the lowest form of life. But have you ever stopped to think that many demons were turned against their will? Have you ever considered that even innocent children are turned into demons? The teen was silent, fist clenched. I know, he repeated softly. He tousled his subordinate's lengthy locks. The world isn't black and white, Yuichiro. There are grays and areas of uncertainty. Don't forget that. Naruto leaned against his desk, orange tie worn loosely around his neck. Her name is Susumaru, by the way. She attacked me on my way back into the city. He frowned. She attacked you? Naruto chuckled. Yeah. You should have seen it. So sure of herself. Controlled by her demonic urges. He crossed his arms. I shattered that confidence in a second. I was going to leave her in the sun to die, like I'd done so many times before. But then, after talking to her, she cried. Actually cried. I've killed a fair amount of demons. But, something about her made me decide to take a different course of action. Yuichiro heaved a tangible sigh, calming himself. I just hope you know what you're doing. When do I never, he replied, to which Yuichiro gave him an incredulous look. I'll watch her like a hawk, okay. And if she makes a move too close for comfort, I'll make sure she never gets another chance. I don't like it, said Yuichiro. But I'll trust you, sensei. Naruto groaned. Enough with the sensei already. Makes me feel old. Technically, he was still a teenager, just like Yuichiro. The younger teen cracked a smile before leaving Naruto's office. I'll be out here with the patients, sensei. The young shinobi/doctor rolled his eyes, then continued documenting. Later he found her sitting in darkness. Susumaru was in the corner of the empty room, legs pulled into her chest. A single lamp was on, casting a dull glow upon her features. She was very pretty, he noted. Though a demon, she possessed the face of an angel. Sharp, symmetrical features and clear, unblemished skin. Her hair was just as striking, shoulder length, obsidian locks that ended in an orange tint. Her eyes, slit like a cat's, shined as brightly as molten gold. Her clothes were still torn asunder, exposing some of her more feminine characteristics. She still held the suit jacket he'd given her, wrapping it around her body. She looked up the moment he arrived, a small book in his hand. "Naruto," she whispered. "Yo," he greeted, strolling to where she sat. "This place is a bit empty. If you're going to be staying here, I might as well add some furniture. Maybe a bed? Some pictures. Oh, some books too. Or even wait," Susumaru interrupted. Naruto paused and rose a curious brow. "What's the matter?" "I'm not sure if this is a good idea." "What isn't?" "This me, being here," she explained. He tilted his head. "Why is that a bad thing?" "Because I'm a demon," she exclaimed, before quickly lowering her voice. "You're a doctor. You help people. You save people. But all I've ever done is kill them." Naruto regarded her from afar, her satin features, her glistening amber orbs. Then he moved closer, sitting down in front her. He gave her all his attention, a gesture that surprised her. "I thought that your blood was everything I would need. But now, I'm not so sure anymore," Susumaru explained. "You saw it? The moment we arrived at the clinic, I could hardly control myself. The scent of that much blood triggered something in me." "But you didn't attack anyone though," Naruto said, looking her in the eyes. "You resisted the urge to do so, despite so much fresh blood being in the air." "That's only because you were there," she deflected. Naruto smiled gently. "Don't sell yourself so short, Susumaru. I know for sure it wasn't just because of me that you restrained yourself." She hugged her knees tightly, gazing downward. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Why don't you?" Naruto inquired, probing deeper into her thoughts. Though she was decades older than him, she acted much younger. Because I've murdered people, Naruto. Innocent people." She looked broken, eyes glistening. "Then you must strive to atone for your sins all the more," he encouraged. "You're still alive. You still have time. Your empathy and compassion for humans is returning. You're a demon, sure. But you can be so much more." "Will this really be okay?" she asked. "What if I attack someone?" "You won't," Naruto replied. "I said it earlier, didn't I? I'm here to stop you if you do. And as you know all too well, there's no way you can beat me," he teased lightly. She laughed a bit, gaze rising to meet his. "Okay." He smiled. "Also, there's someone I want you to meet. I'll take you to see her in a few days. She's a doctor just like me. But she reminds me of you in a way." "In what way?" she asked. And Naruto's smile widened into a grin. "Oh, it's a surprise." End.